to this Blender tutorial. The end result is hopefully going to be an animated flag that blows in the wind with a sort of grassy background and a sort of spotlight where you can see the shadows. We're going to be using, I've got Blender 2.76 and we're going to use Blender cycles to do the rendering. So let's start off with the default cube. And we're going to turn this cube into the flagpole. So we're going to scale it down by pushing S to make it into a fairly small cube, and then click. And then we'll go into edit mode by pressing tab just next to Q. And Control and tab brings up the mesh select mode, and I want the face select. So I can right click on the top and we're going to grab this up. So G and then Z forces it to grab up in the Z axis, and then click up here. So we've got our flagpole just here. Let's go back into object mode, and we're going to add a subdivision surface modifier, and you can see how it sort of subdivides it too much near the top and the bottom. So we're going to go back into into edit mode, and Control and R to add a loop cut near the top, and Control and R to add a loop cut near the bottom, and that's going to be our flagpole. Going to make it smooth, and this will do for now. Okay, then we'll add a ground plane, so Shift and A to add a mesh, a plane, scale it up with S, so that's going to be the floor, and we're going to add another plane which is going to be our flag. So Shift and A, plane, grab with G, and then grab it up the Z axis by pressing Z, and click near the top. Okay, we want to rotate it around this green line, which is Y, so R, and then Y, and then 90, enter to rotate 90 degrees. Let's make it a little bit smaller, grab it in the X direction with G and then Z, and then G and Y to move it along the Y axis. Okay, so I want to make it a little bit longer in the Y direction, so that's S for scale, Y for the Y direction, and then click when we're happy. There we go, so that's going to be all of the geometry, all of the meshes that we're going to need. Now we're going to texture them. So before we do that, it's worth always naming all of the meshes that you have. It's not necessary, but certainly if you want to keep track of all of the objects that you've got in your scene, or if you ever want to export into a game later, it's really good practice. So I'm going to call this the floor, right click on the flagpole, and we'll call it pole. Right click on the flag, and we're going to call it flag. Okay, so to texture them, we're going to change into cycles render, and we'll start with the ground plane. So we'll go on the materials tab, add a new material, and it's in diffuse mode at the moment. That's fine. Click on the little blob next to color, lets us choose an image, and I've just searched on Google for an image. I've searched for grass and then tileable. So if I click open, and I've saved it into a textures folder, tileable grass. I'm going to split the screen over here, change one of the screen modes from 3D view into UV image editing. So the image I've just opened is this one, tileable grass. Anyone would be fine. This was just one of the first ones that came up. The reason why I search for tileable is so that it can tessellate, which means that if you put this image next to each other, you won't be able to see the seams around the edges. But any other tileable grass image would be fine. I'm going to name the material as well. I'm going to call this grass. And you'll notice you can't see the grass on this object yet. First, we need to change it to material mode. Then you see the rough colour, but you can't see the detail. To make that happen, we need to splat this 2D image onto this 3D shape. So to do that, we need to be in edit mode, so I'm pressing tab, and then with the mouse over the right hand side of the screen, I'm pressing U for unwrap, choose unwrap at the top, and you can now see this image. The grass looks a bit big to me, so with the mouse over the UV image, I'm going to press S to scale, and this is why it's useful to have a tileable image. You can't really see the seams around the edges, so I'll click round about there. Okay, that'll do for the grass. I'll do the same sort of thing now for the pole. So tab to go back into object mode, right click on the pole. Let's change the material name to wood. Again, I've searched for an image with wood tileable, and I've saved that. I'm going to click use nodes, a little blob next to colour and image texture. So this time I'll open up the wood image, and let's see it in the UV editor. It's this one just here. Let's go into edit mode, select all of the faces by pressing A until it's toggled, U to unwrap and unwrap. And again, it doesn't look quite right, so you can experiment with the scale. That will do. And the same for the flag. So I've just searched for a United Kingdom flag. You can have whichever flag that you like. So right click this one here, let's add a new material. Let's call it flag. Let's add an image texture, open it up. Wikipedia has got loads of flag images that you can use. And again, we need to UV unwrap it. So let's find the image, go into edit mode, U to unwrap. So this time we've got to change it ever so slightly. You can see you've only got part of the image here. So we're going to scale it a little bit in the X direction, that's S and X. And then grab it over here. It's a little bit too much, so S, X, let's grab it down a bit. There we go. So this looks to me like it's rotated the wrong direction. So I'm going to press R90, S, Y, squidge it down, S, X, and that looks better to me. Okay, so we've got our materials, which means that we can get rid of this UV editing mode. So click on the little lines at the top, and I want to keep the side on the right, so I'll drag it across that way and let go. Now we want to set up some lighting. So I'm going to go to the World tab and change the surface colour all the way down to black, so that if you render it now, it looks pretty much dark, apart from we've got this sun here. So if I select that light, I'm going to change it to be a spotlight, and sometimes it's easier to see what's happening if you change it to rendered view. You can see the spotlight, but it needs to be much brighter. So I'm going to say use nodes. I'm going to say take the strength up considerably. I'm going to change the blend up as well, so it's a bit more faded, and I'm going to go up quite a lot to about sort of 500-ish. Okay, so that will do. Let's go back to material mode. The angle I'm going to change down a little bit, and I'm going to move it around until it's kind of pointing in one direction. And I'd quite like two shadows, so I'm going to press Shift and D to duplicate that, and R to rotate, R again, and there we go. Oh, I'm not quite sure if that's pointing in the right sort of direction. Let's have a look. Let's change it to rendered mode. And that's reasonable, but I don't really want to be able to see the edge of the grass. So let's change it so both spotlights are focused on the same sort of place. So R isn't bad. Yeah, that'll do, I think. I'm going to press 0 on the numpad to see in the camera. If you haven't got a keyboard with a numpad, you should just go View and Camera. And I'm going to right click on the edge of the camera, and Shift and F lets you sort of control the camera with your mouse. So I'm going to move in with W, A, S and D. I'm going to kind of control the camera a little bit until it's got the kind of view that I want. I'm going to look down on the flag and see the ground underneath. So it might help actually if we make this ground plane a little bit bigger. I'll right click and press S. There we go, I quite like that view. So I'll press space and say align camera to view. There we go. So if we try rendering this, that's what we've got at the moment. So that looks fine, but the flag is just a rectangle. I'd much prefer it if it looked cloth-like, a little bit more flexible. So let's go back to material mode. There's a couple of things that we're going to do here. So with the flag selected, let's go into edit mode, and we want to subdivide this surface. So let's make sure everything's selected by pressing A until it all goes orange. W for the specials menu, and we'll subdivide it, and along the tools menu on the left, we'll subdivide it up about 8, 9 or 10 times. This means that when we deform this flag, there's going to be a bit more detail that we can play with. So let's go on to the physics mode. So you can use your mouse wheel to scroll along until you can see the sort of bouncing ball on physics mode. And we're going to enable cloth simulation. So this means that when you press Alt and A, there should be some sort of physics simulation that predicts how this material is going to behave. So Alt and A just makes it fall to the floor at the moment. That's no fun. We need to make it attach itself to the pole. So to do that, let's go back into edit mode, select nothing this time with A. I'm going to press C and then just select all of the vertices on the left where we want it to be detected. So C is circle select. You can push your mouse wheel in to unselect, or you can left click and drag to select. So now that we've got these selected, we want to go into the object data and make a new vertex group so that we can save all of these vertices and tell these vertices to stay still. So I'll click plus next to vertex groups. I'm going to call it pin, pin rather than pi, and click assign. So all of these vertices are now grouped and given a name called pin. So now if we go back to the physics tab, we can enable pinning and choose that, that vertex group here. So when we press Alt and A now, the flag is attached at those points. So it's all right, but you can see all of the vertices here in our simulation. It doesn't look very smooth. So if we go back to object mode and press smooth shading, shift and left to go back to frame 1. This is our timeline along here. Alt and A, that looks a little bit better. But the flag is still really droopy, so we're going to change a couple of the settings for it. First, we'll change the mass right down. I'm going to go to 0.1, so the flag doesn't weigh all that much. And we're going to try and put some wind in to blow the flag a little bit. So I'll left click over here somewhere, Shift and A, let's add a force field and some wind. So this tunnel is the direction and force of the wind. So we want to rotate it round so it's kind of blowing the flag in the right direction. So R and X and 90 for 90 degrees. And the arrow is the direction that it's pointing, so that's wrong. R, X, so I'm going to take it all the way around. There we go. So it's not blowing very fast at the moment. If we change the strength up, then you can see we've got some wind blowing. And I'm going to add some noise, because if we just have constant wind, then the flag's not going to look like it's blowing around. So let's try again, Alt and A. And now, hopefully, you can see the wind is blowing that flag, but possibly not as much as we'd like. So Alt and A. There we go, that's pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to press Alt and A to stop the animation at a frame that I like. That's pretty good, that'll do. You could render all of the frames, but I'm just going to do one still. Let's go into rendered mode and see what it looks like. So that's reasonable, but the flag I don't think looks particularly good at the moment. We're going to do a little bit of compositing just to make it look a bit more realistic. So let's go into material mode, let's change it into compositing view. I think it's quite nice to have this in rendered view so you can see a sort of live display. So this, if you've not used the compositor before, it can be a little bit confusing. We'll say turn on nodes, and we want to change the nodes for the material for this flag. So I've right clicked on the flag. So we can see that we've got an image, we've got a diffuse shader, and this is what's currently being rendered. We're going to keep the image, but we're going to change it so that we've also got kind of a ripple effect on here. So in fact, I'm going to go back to a different frame where it's easier to see most of the flag. There we go. And then I'll change back to rendered mode. Okay, so let's add a new texture, sorry, a new shader, and we're going to go for velvet this time. And the colour that we want, we're going to go for a ramp, and I can never remember where to find these ones. I think it's input, is it? Sorry, bear with me, I should have checked this beforehand. Oh, here we go, yeah, it's a texture. And we'll go for a wave texture. So the colour from the wave texture is going to go in here, and we're going to add a mix shader. So we're going to keep the image, the textured flag, but the output from our mix shader is going to go in here, and our velvet shader is also going to go into the other input. There we go. So you can see how we've got kind of a wave superimposed on top of the image now. So this is our wavy image. We've got a velvety surface mixed in, and you can change. So if we take it full on this way, we've only got the waviness. If we take it full on the other way, we've only got the flag. You can choose which one you want. I think rather than bands, rings looks a little bit better. And if you change distortion, I don't know if you can see that, but you can make these lines a little bit more wavy. And I don't want to see the waves that much. I mostly want to see the flag, but just with a slight little effect. Okay, so we've now got a still image that we could render, or if you wanted to, you could set it to render the whole animation. It's not going to look particularly good if you render it from frame 1, because frame 1 it just looks like a solid rectangle. So if you were to render the whole animation, it would be worth saying your start frame is going to be 30 or something like that, up until maybe frame 100. So that's now going to play these bits here. So if you set it up to render an animation, make sure that you choose to render. This one will be good for an MP4, H.264. Choose where it's going to save to, hit animation, and then wait for it to go through all of the frames. It's going to take a little while to do, but you can see as it goes through each of the frames, hopefully the flag should wave in the wind, and you've got yourself a nice animated texture. So feel free to play with it, change the lighting, maybe have a couple of different flags all blowing in the wind, see what you can create. If you do anything impressive, post a picture, post a video, I'd love to see. I hope this has been useful. Thanks for watching.